First of all, the amount of money that your offer is when you start at a company is huge because all your raises, everything is based off that amount of money. So if
Mm,
you agree to something that's lower, you're automatically going to be at a disadvantage. And right now, engineering industry is such a hot market. There's such a demand for us that people are willing to pay, again, a lot of money in order to have us work for them. And so employers know that. They know what's going on. So coming to them and saying, I don't want to move. I don't want to leave. I don't want to be a disgruntled employee because I feel like I'm not getting paid. You need to communicate that to your boss and say, I'm a good employee. I've done X, Y, and Z. I've done my research out there. I see that people are making, five, $10,000 more than I am. And I think this is the time for me to get an adjustment on my salary. There is nothing wrong with saying something like that to your employer.
Welcome everyone back to Custom Journeys. I am Elisa Iglesias here with my podcast co-host Andrew Baines. Please watch, subscribe to the pod on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow the pod on Instagram by searching at Custom Journeys. That's CUSTEM Journeys. And we're here today with the wonderful Judith Ibarra-Biancetta. We're happy to have her on today. She's the Vice President of U.S. Growth Strategy at Tetra Tech. She also has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from UT Austin. That's the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns.
Woo.
As well as a Professional Engineering certification. Thank you so much, Judith, for coming to the pod today.
Yeah, thank you both for inviting me to talk about my journey, and congratulations to both of you for starting this podcast in general, as a way to promote more people to join STEM careers. So that's a really great thing that both of you are doing. So thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're excited to talk to you and learn about your career, as Eli said. So we always kind of like to start with where the guests are currently. So you're the VP of is it US growth? Is that correct? At Tetra Tech?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
U.S. growth
So
and strategy. Yes. Mhm.
so what exactly does that mean? What's kind of what do you kind of do? What are your responsibilities at Tetra Tech?
So right now, there's obviously a lot of infrastructure needs throughout the US. So I'm talking about everything from water, drinking water, wastewater, storm water, streets and drainage, things that you encounter every day in your life. There's a lot of needs to improve that for communities around the US. And so what my role is really focused on is how can we bring the unique solutions that my company has, and with a lot of scientists, engineers, technology professionals thinking about innovative solutions that we can bring to different areas throughout the US to try and help improve those things that I just talked about. And so a lot of that is going out and figuring out what the technologies are, what the needs are of communities, and going and talking to the agencies that are responsible for making those improvements and finding ways to support them, collaborate with them, bring our services to them so that way we can develop the solution to support, infrastructure throughout the US. So that's what my role is really finding those connection points in different parts of the US and how we can bring solutions forward to help communities. Hopefully
Cool.
that made sense.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it
No,
did.
it does.
You broke it down.
So what give me one kind of follow-up question to that. What's kind of like a day in a life like for you? I imagine like as a VP, you have like a ton of meetings trying to figure out like, hey, bottom line for the company and things of that nature. So what's kind of a day in the life at starting at whatever time you walk in the door at your company?
Well, that's an interesting question because the last 2 years, obviously, the day in the life has changed with COVID. Before COVID, day in the life was go out. So, I'd start my day not actually going to the office. I'd actually go talk to these agencies that I talked about that are responsible for improving communities, improving drinking water supply, wastewater treatment, all those sorts of things. Go talking to them, visiting with them, listening to what's going on with their organization, what are the needs. So I do something like that. When I do come back to the office, a lot of times it is meetings, back to back meeting, talking about what I'm hearing out there from the different utilities about what the needs are. Sometimes it's talking about how we can bring a unique solution forward for that different issue that a utility is facing, whether that be talking with different technical professionals within my company. So that way we can start brainstorming and thinking, oh, I've heard from this utility, they really have a problem with how they're going to get their drinking water for the next 30 years. So in my company, I would get a bunch of professional technical leaders together and start brainstorming how can we bring a solution to that problem, and then thinking about those solutions, talking to the utilities, going back and say, "Hey, we thought about this. Is this something you're interested in?" So in our industry, that's called business development. A lot of times, where you go and talk to utilities, you talk to them about the solutions, and then you put bids in so that way you can do the work for them, and they can pay you to do that work. And so preparing those thoughts, preparing those solutions is really really important part of it, and then you have to translate that to paper. So you have to get all your ideas together and then you have to put it in a document and a proposal. I don't know if you all are familiar with this process, but you actually write down what your solution is. You write down what your my company offers in that whatever that challenge is that we're trying to submit on. We have to write down who the people are that are going to be working on that type of project and then submit that to different utilities and see, and then utilities will get all these proposals from different companies, and so they'll evaluate all those proposals and then pick the best one. So so all of that talking and all of that brainstorming of solutions and then putting down on paper and then giving a cost of how much it's going to cost to do that work for the utility, all that is what encompasses the day, but that's basically what it consists of. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
clear, that's clear to you guys.
I think that kinda gives us a good picture of, like, what you do as a VP for our listeners and our audience, so that helps clear it up a lot. So once upon a time, before you became the VP at Tetra Tech, I imagine you were a little girl trying to figure out, "Hey, what do you want to major in college?" So our next question that we always ask our guests is, what was it that got you interested in pursuing a degree in engineering at University of Texas at Austin?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I always reflect on it because it kind of I kind of feel like I've come full circle to how I ended up an engineer. So I'm from a small border town in South Texas that I know both of you guys know, Laredo, Texas. And when I was in about seventh and eighth grade, that's when I started to get, I really started falling in love with math and science, especially math. I loved math because you get an answer. It's
Mhm.
not like it's
Mhm.
right or wrong. It's not like it's all subjective and all this kind of stuff that you deal with other subjects. I just love math. And so as they start asking, what do you want to study? What do all these questions they ask you when you're like 14 years old and you're like, like you're prepared to answer that question. But my mom, who was a counselor at a community college down Laredo Community College, she would always tell me, why don't you become an engineer? Because they're good in math and science and they get paid well. And I said, well, mom, what is that? And she said, I don't know. I don't know what they do. I just know that they get paid money. They get money and that they use a lot of math and science. And for her, she just wanted to make sure that me and my sisters had a job, we're able to financially support ourselves. That was that was her goal for us. And because she couldn't tell me what engineers did, her and my dad put me in summer programs at universities to learn more about what engineers do. So I went to University of Texas for a weekend. It wasn't during the summer. I think it was my junior, no, maybe my sophomore year. I went to a summer STEM program. At that time, it wasn't called STEM. It was probably called like Introduction to, I don't know, engineering at UT. And so it was like a
Yeah.
weekend program. And you're able to go there with other students and just tour the campus. They went over the curriculum of what, to be an engineer, you have to study, these courses, and then they would have speakers come and talk, engineers that were working in the industry, and then talk about their jobs. So I did that, and then I also actually went to A&M, and I did the same thing. They had the same kind of program where they had people come and talk. And one of the other programs that I did was the pre-freshman engineering program, which I know is I don't know if it's still around anymore, but that was another one that kind of taught me about what engineering studying, what the courses are that you have to take in college, and also has speakers come in and talk about, engineers come in and talk about their profession. When I went to the UT one of the speakers came in and he said, engineers improve civilization for the betterment of mankind. And I was like, when I heard him say that, I said, and they use math and science to do that. I said, that's what I want to do. And I was at, of course, going to UT and A&M. I fell in love with Austin. So I ended up applying to UT College of Engineering and got accepted. But when I was accepted, I was more interested in chemical engineering. So
Mhm.
biomedical was really the field. I was really interested in prosthetics and things like that. But then when you're a freshman in college, they make you take kind of general courses and understand the different fields. And again, I don't know if it's like still like that, but that's the way it was when I was in school. And that's when I took a course in water resources, and that's when I decided civil engineering was for me. But but that's kind of the story of how I ended up in as an engineer studying. It was because of those summer programs. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of the younger kids today is that they just don't even know what engineers do. And so the fact that I was able to do those programs, that's really how I understood what they do. And I always think back to what that man said, about engineers improving civilization, because now that I've been working in the field now 20, I guess 2 years, I see everything that we're doing and I see all the improvements and how we're improving communities and we're really improving civilization. And so it stuck with me when he said that. It influenced me to become an engineer, and I truly believe the work that we're doing is that. And so that's kind of how I ended up at UT Austin a long time ago. Long, long
No, but
time
it
ago.
I bet you it seems like yesterday, though. I bet you it seems like yesterday. That's a wonderful, wonderful thank you for talking us through that. As you were going to UT Austin, how did you fund tuition to pay for
So
tuition?
I got loans.
Okay.
Both my parents worked, so we didn't qualify for any sort of grants or anything like that. Of course, my mom and dad worked really, really hard. They didn't have an extra $40,000, laying around the house to pay for my college education. So we decided to take out loans. My parents felt also that because I got accepted to the College of Engineering at UT, they felt like I needed to go as a freshman. I know there's a lot of high school students that think, well, maybe I should go to junior college for 2 years or, not go straight off to college and leave home. But because I did get accepted and we felt like that was a privilege, my parents said, let's just go as a freshman and we're just going to have to take out loans. So that's what we did. And, I'm still paying off my loans today. I've been out of school, for very, very long and I'm still paying my loan, and that's the reality of the situation. But
Looking back I'm sorry, looking back, would you say it's been worth it?
yes, it definitely has been worth it. I love my job. I love what I do. And yes, it's definitely been worth it. I think, the conversation that we're all having now about how expensive it is for college. I mean, I do agree with it. It's for you to do something like this, get a degree and for it to be a burden for you for so many years, I definitely agree with that's not right. But unfortunately I didn't have any other choice, at the time. And I 100% feel that it was the right choice for me, and I'm fine. I'm still paying them off. I'm almost done. But yeah, yeah, I definitely feel like it was an investment that was worth it. Mhm.
Thank you for sharing, willing to share that, because a lot of students there, that's one of their biggest bugaboos, their biggest fears is taking on debt. And I would say, I don't know if you agree with this, but it's okay to do that if as long as you have a plan, right, to handle that debt
Mhm.
afterwards. So that comes with
Mhm.
a lot of financial literacy. But to keep moving forward, now that you've survived a rigorous engineering curriculum, and you can speak to that if you want, but what was your first job coming out of college?
So, when I was in college, every summer I took advantage of the time to do different internships. So, when I was my freshman year, I went back to Laredo and I worked for TxDOT, which hopefully you guys have heard of TxDOT. So I got to work in the field for that summer. And then the next 2 summers, so one of the speakers that came to talk to us when I was in college talked to him about his experience. I ended up calling him because he was doing water resources and saying, "Hey, I'm interested in an internship for you guys." And so I ended up working at another company similar to the one that I'm working at now, that does a lot of civil engineering. and they ended up offering me like, an internship to work for them part-time while I was in school, and they're in Austin. And so I worked in the summers, and then during when school started, I was able to do like a couple of hours, not a lot, just because my workload was really, really heavy. So I didn't want to commit to the 15 part-time hours. But they were able to hang on to me. And then when I graduated from college, they ended up hiring me. So the reason why I say that is because those internships that I did and that I connected with them before I graduated, that's how I got my job afterwards, because I had already been working with them and had already done, gotten some experience. So that was my first job in Austin. It was for a company called HDR.
Gotcha.
There we go.
Cool. Yeah, those internships are very valuable.
Mhm.
So we looked at your LinkedIn profile. And you've had like extensive history in leadership roles, but then not only that, but then also in SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. Can you talk a little bit about your experience working with SHIP and then how that may have helped you throughout your time in college?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's definitely college is where it started. When I was at UT Austin, SHIP had offered a couple of things to students. Obviously, Latino Hispanic students offered tutoring, so free tutoring for classes. They also, in civil engineering field, you have to get an EIT certification before you can get your professional engineer certification. So they offered like a preparation course for the EIT that was also on campus. And then they had, just group meetings, just getting together, getting to know different students. But I think for my for my educational piece, offering that tutoring was very, very critical to me because, I don't think I would have made it without having the support of tutors, to help me through some of those courses. And then, again, offering that EIT preparation course was also valuable to me. So during college, definitely by far, SHIP was a big part of me and a big part of me graduating from college. When I graduated, I decided to get back involved in SHIP. So SHIP has a very large focus on college educated, supporting students through their college education. But once they
Hmm.
graduate, um, the involvement of professional members isn't quite as high as it is for the college level students. So I decided that I wanted to try and make a difference with that. And so I started getting involved in the professional kind of chapters of SHIP and trying to help reinvigorate that and help promote that, because not only is it a challenge to get minorities into college and get the college degrees, it's also hard for them to keep them working in industry for various reasons. They end up leaving. And so I felt like that was my next sort of mission, is to help people that are working, Latinos, Hispanics that are working, help provide ways to help them grow in their career. And so I helped launch the San Antonio ship chapter, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I helped with the relaunch of the ship chapter in Los Angeles as well. And Los Angeles is actually where ships started, so it was really rewarding to get that off the ground, to be part of the team to get that off the ground in LA. But as a professional, being involved in ship has done the same thing that it did for me when I was in college, like just trying to help meet people, support others in growing their career, putting together, programs, bringing in speakers, making connections with different people that are working in the industry. How can we all help each other be successful? How can we help each other grow in careers? How can we help each other grow our businesses? All those sorts of things. So it's been really rewarding. It's a big part of my life, and it's a big part of my personal mission of growing Latinos and Hispanics in this field, because there's just not enough of them. So organizations like SHIP are very critical to do that. So it's definitely a big part of me. I feel grateful that I got involved in it when I was in college, and I'm committed to supporting SHIP, as long as I'm able to, because of everything that SHIP's done for me. So I think it's a really important organization for our industry.
Awesome. Now we're going to go ahead and switch into our second segment for the podcast. This is called Fact
Yep.
or Cap. So essentially,
Okay.
it's just true or false. You got 60 seconds to answer each individual question. So you can say fact or cap and give a brief explanation as long as you limit it to 60 seconds. It's nothing too crazy, so don't worry. But yeah,
Okay.
get your take. So we got like 5 questions for you. So
All right.
First one I'm gonna throw out
First one.
there. I'm gonna kind of skip around a little bit on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
So first one is so since you network a lot and you have to meet people, talk to people a lot, I'd imagine you're always looking for different ways to do that effectively. Factor cap. LinkedIn is the best way to network with people.
Mm, is there a middle answer?
No, that's the
Okay,
point.
okay. I'm gonna say cat. And I'm gonna
Okay.
explain why I say cat. Um, the best way to network with people is in person, talking to someone face to face, eye contact, you know, seeing their expressions, seeing how they're communicating. There's a lot of things to communication besides me just talking to you. It's how my hands, my posture, how I'm standing, how I'm dressed. There's so many things that go into it.
Yeah.
So that's the best way of of connecting. Now, LinkedIn is augments that. So if I meet someone in person, I can connect on LinkedIn and stay connected with them. But they already know me. They've met me. They've seen me. They've talked to me. So LinkedIn's just another way for me to stay connected with them when I'm not there face to face. And so, especially in this virtual environment, it's the second best thing. But I would say it's not the best thing. It's the
Okay.
second best thing.
All right. Cool. Next one, factor cap. It's not what you know, but who you know that matters.
Uh, okay, I'm gonna say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
So your network is more important than your skills. Factor cap.
I wish there was a middle one here. I'm gonna say fact, but so it is important to know people. Yes, absolutely. That makes a difference in your job, what happens to you. It's important for them to make that connection. Again, that face-to-face connection, they know you. But your skill sets are also important. Just like you can meet someone and connect with them and maybe they can open doors, you have to perform, you have to know what to do, and that's where your skills come into the picture. So that's why I hate picking one or the other. I think both of them are together. You can't just say, I don't know how to do something. And then, yeah, this person, he's going to put me in this role, but I'm not going to be able to perform and do what I need to do. That's not going to help the situation for you to be successful. So they both are very important. But yes, who you know also, is definitely very important in that picture. So.
Okay.
I'm not
Next
good at
one.
this game, right?
I see
No, this is great. This is great.
you trying to pick the
Dropping,
middle ground
yeah,
for each one.
dropping gems
I
still.
know. Well,
All right. I'm
that's
curious about
that's
this.
who I am.
I'm curious about this next one. All right. So you talked about having student loans a lot. Factor cap. College education should be free. No middle ground.
Should be free. I would say cap. I don't think it should be free. I don't think it should be as expensive as it is though. And I think there should be options. Like I think there should be some here I go the middle ground. I think there should be some colleges that are free that maybe don't have, depending on the curriculum, what they're focused on. I definitely feel those should be free. I think, there should be some that you pay for. Again, you pay for what you get. Sometimes there's better opportunities. You have access to different companies. And so I think paying kind of aligns with that. Now, paying, an outrageous amount of money, I don't agree with that at all. But I do think there should be some payment for some schools. I do think that. So,
Okay. Next one. So you talked about having a PE, right? So first you get your EPI and then you get your PE. I'm gonna rephrase it. So a professional engineering license is worth the investment. Factor cap.
fact, fact.
Okay.
There,
Why
see,
do
I
you?
got one.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the easy one. Yeah.
There you go. Why? Quick
Yes,
question. Quick explanation. Why do you say that?
because it's been so many great opportunities. There's a lot of responsibility that's placed on professional engineers. It's not just a license. We're entrusted with safety, with security for communities, for people. A lot of people don't realize when they turn on their faucet, water comes out, they're able to drink it, they don't get deathly ill. People when they flush their toilet, they don't think about where that water goes, and how civil engineers are treating that water so that way it can go back into the rivers and streams and not kill, animals. There's so many things that engineers do that are improving communities, improving safety, improving the way we live. And so having that license is truly a reflection of the commitment that we have, to the community. And so yes, I think it's very much worth the investment that's made in order to get that license.
Okay, we got one more and then a bonus. Next one. Have you worked in both private and public sector? Is that correct?
I have. Yes, I have.
Okay. So factor cap, you can make more money working in the private sector versus public.
Um, I'm gonna say cap on that one. I think it depends, your role. I think it depends your responsibility. Um, I think in general, public sector, obviously the public sector has limitations. They're funded by taxpayers. There's a lot of of eyes, scrutiny on the work they do and how they pay employees. So I know that that's a challenge. But again, if you're in a really high role with a utility, if you're doing a really important important work, you can make just as much money as the private sector, does as well. Private sector obviously is more nimble, you can move around a lot. You can, it's a lot more flexible in how you manage your days. And so I don't know, there's just different trade-offs, but I definitely think the payment, can be the same or
Oh,
competitive between public and private sector.
gotcha. All right, and we got one quick bonus question for you. So you've lived in LA, so you lived in Cali, and you also lived in Texas, and you
Mhm.
cannot give a middle ground
Nope,
answer on
not
this
allowed
question. I
on
just want to
this
make
one.
that clear,
Oh, I
Judith.
know what this question is gonna be.
Well, we'll see. So factor cap, San Antonio has the best tacos.
Oh, well, that's a fact. I mean, come on. Well, actually, maybe that's a
Uh-oh.
cap because Laredo has
Well,
really good tacos.
uh we're gonna have to find out,
Yeah,
Andrew.
you know what? I'm gonna say cap. Capped. Laredo has
Cap,
better tacos.
Laredo.
Yanni's in Laredo. That's the
All
best.
right, that's a homer answer.
Yeah, it is.
That's all right.
That
A
was
little
too
bias.
easy. That was a too easy one.
All right.
But no, no, yeah, no, we wanna break the pod like this was this fun exercise. But yeah, thank you for being a good sport about it. A lot of gems in this one. But now we're gonna
Okay.
move forward to a professional development section, where we discuss some of
Okay.
your experiences working as a professional with a STEM degree. Now, you discussed some of the pros and cons of working in private and public, which one might have more money available for you to make as a salary. As a civil engineer, what have you seen in terms of salary in the multiple levels you've worked in? And feel free to
So are you
answer in.
talking so do
Go
you
ahead.
wanna see you want, like, number range or what do
We
you mean
want
by
to
what
see
have
your
I seen?
W-2 answers. So you just
Count,
got them recently because it's
counting your
February.
pocket.
Yeah, I mean, well, right now, I actually just talked to our HR department on what kind of engineering offers or what are the offers for entry level engineers. And right now, they're telling me it's between 60 and 80,000. I think it's also dependent where you live, right? Because different cities have higher costs of living, different parts of the US have different ranges. So it's hard to say, what that exact number is, but for entry level, that's definitely the number that I got hot off the press. I don't know if that's what you guys are hearing out there from your audience, but again, as you move up in your career, opportunities to make more money, but that comes with a lot of responsibility as well. So it can range all over the place. There's people, that are executive leaders within companies that are making, half a million, and with bonus they're making, over 1 million. So it could be
Okay.
all over the place. I think it's dependent on the level of responsibility that you have and the actions that you take to help grow your career can have a direct impact on what that number is. So to quantify it and say if you have 10 years of experience, this is what your range is going to be is really hard to do because somebody at 10 years of experience can be an executive manager versus someone with 10 years might be, functioning as more of a project level manager or something like that. So it really is dependent on that level of responsibility that you have within the organization. And that'll be reflected in how much you get paid. But of course, there's a lot of things that go along with that with the amount of money that you make. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. No,
You
that's
still want
good.
a
I
number.
gotta follow up.
You still want you still want to see my
Now you
W-2,
We're
right?
engineers. We need numbers,
yeah,
man.
yes, exactly. We are numbers people. That's what we do. So quick question, quick follow-up question for you. So Thanks for reaching out to your HR department to like get like the salary range for like entry level. But I have a question there. So like we're talking about like a $20,000 pay difference between like somebody that may get an offer at 60 grand or somebody that gets an offer at 80 grand. What's kind of the difference or the deciding factor in terms of if you get a 60 grand offer or an 80 grand offer? Is it something that you're looking for experience wise or leadership wise or just negotiation skills or what kind of plays into that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a combination of all of those things. One of the things you can do when you're looking at how much you want to get paid is do some research. We have the internet and see. You have to look at the city that where you're gonna where you're gonna work and do some research. How much does an engineer, coming out of school make in this city? Now you have to understand engineers are there are all kinds of engineers. And so there's some engineers that make a lot more money than civil engineers do. So within those buckets, there's all those sort of other buckets to look into um also as well. But I would definitely say do your research, figure out how much money you should be making, uh, your experience. So remember I talked about I worked while I was in college. So that automatically makes you more attractive to an employer rather than somebody that's never worked. Just because you have experience in the industry, you have probably references that they can call on and say, "Oh, this person's worked here and they're a good employee." So that automatically puts you at an advantage. You mentioned leadership, always a good thing to be involved in different organizations to show your leadership skills, whether or maybe you're involved in volunteering or whatever it is, whatever organization you're involved in, but showing that, I'm a leader, I'm respected. I have people that can talk about my skills and being responsible. All those things matter and all those things are part of that a package of how you say how much money you want. And then also, if you had another job, you're going to come in with a certain baseline salary and that might put you on the higher range because you might have come in, you were working somewhere and they paid you 60. So you're going to say, well, I want to make more than where I'm coming from or else I'm not going to, make a move. So that's another way to say, I'm on the higher end of that scale. Those are the different things that I think make a difference.
No, the salary question is one of the most common questions we get from our audience, especially younger people, since they're thinking, how is this degree going to help me out money wise? On top of that, we find that salary negotiation is something we never really think about. So, from that perspective, any advice you would be willing to give to younger people or people trying to get into the business or move up in their engineering degree track to get a higher salary?
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's a really important question, especially for the women or the young girls that are or teenagers or whoever's listening to the podcast, because a lot of times that's first of all the amount of money that your offer is when you start at a company is huge because all your raises, everything is based off that amount of money. So if
Mm,
you agree to something that's lower, you're automatically going to be at a disadvantage. The time that you spend at that company because you're starting out from a lower place. So that starting salary is really, really important wherever you are, wherever, you're working. But yeah, I would definitely say, again, back to that research, understanding what the market is paying is a huge advantage. And again, you take that to the person that you're going to work for and say, this is what I need to be paid. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I've done my research and this is how much people are paying for this role. Now, agencies, employers all know this because they're all doing the same research on their side. They're seeing what different companies are paying. So they should know also what's going on. But you have to understand that it's not up to them. It's up to you. And it's up to what you say. This is what I want to be paid. And you have to communicate it like that and say, I've done my research. This is what I'm seeing out there and this is what I want. And so so the employer might come back and say, well, that's not how much we're offering, or maybe they can do some other sort of incentives. But it's not up to them to define that. It's up to you to define it. And it's up to you to accept it too. So a lot of times when people are working, they're saying, "Oh, well, I don't get paid as much as this person, and I don't get paid as much as that person." Well, you have to remember that first starting point when you accepted the offer on that basis of payment, you said, "I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this payment or this, how I'm going to get paid." So you have to take that responsibility and accept the fact that you've made those decisions and you've accepted what's in front of you. Now, as you're working, and maybe you might see something as you're working, sometimes in the field, we'll see other companies, start wanting to take our people and making offers to them and throwing out other money, other levels of salary. That's also another time where you can go to your employer and say, "You know what? This other company's paying whatever 20,000 more for this same role. And, I want to know how I can increase, how can I don't want to leave, I don't want to leave you all. I don't want to go work for this other company. How can we increase my salary to be more reflective of what's going on in our competitive marketplace?" And again, employers know this. They know what's going on right now. Engineering industry is such a hot market. People are getting there's such a demand for us that people are willing to pay, again, a lot of money in order to have us work for them. And so employers and all these agencies that hire us know that. They know what's going on. So coming to them and saying, "I don't want to move. I don't want to leave. I don't want to be a disgruntled employee because I feel like I'm not getting paid." You need to communicate that to your boss and say, "I'm a good employee. I've done X, Y, and Z. I've done my research out there. I see that people are making, five, $10,000 more than I am. And I think this is the time for me to get an adjustment on my salary." There is nothing wrong with saying something like that to your employer. So you just have to be, but you need to be armed. You need to have a basis you can't just, I can't just walk in there and say, "Hey, I need to get paid $10,000 more, just because that's what everyone else is paying." That's not going to work either. You have to come armed. You have to come with justification. You have to give points as to why that's important. And so I think more than not, you'll get whatever it is you ask for. You just have to, come with a really good package of backup of why that's what you want in your career. But you have to communicate that, and you have to know what you want. And there's nothing wrong with speaking up to your employer about it. It's not like they're gonna get upset with you or think differently of you. I think they'll understand, and they'll actually be appreciative that you're communicating with them before doing something like maybe perhaps leaving the company or doing something else. I think they would really appreciate that openness and honestness that you're sharing with them on how much your salary should be.
Gotcha. No, that's all great advice. And I think that'll really help people for advocating for themselves is go out there and do the research and then take that to your supervisor or your
Yes.
company. So I appreciate that. I do have one more follow-up money question.
Okay.
Would you be comfortable, and I can always edit this out if you don't. Would you be comfortable telling the audience what somebody could expect in terms of a salary range for like a BP of a civil engineering or engineering firm like Tetra Tech?
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell you the exact number because
Oh
again,
yeah,
it
yeah. No, no.
ranges. It ranges from where, you live, what state, what city, what
Yeah.
country you're in. But I mean, definitely I'd say, 170, 180 up to 500. There's a big range there as well. Depending on the responsibility you have, depending on the role that you have, depending on, the success or how successful you are or you're not. All those things factor into that. So that's about the best range that I could give you.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, and the really great thing I'm glad you mentioned in there is the responsibility. So there's no free lunch, right? With whatever salary that you get, there's gonna be something that
Right.
expectations that come along with it. Can you talk briefly about,
Absolutely.
like yeah, can you talk briefly about your expectations or responsibility in terms of, like, an hour per week? Just so that people can kinda get, like, a mindset of, like, "Hey, yeah, I wanna make a lot of money, but what comes along with that is I have to work X amount of hours, or I have to take
Yeah.
phone calls at 9 p.m." or whatever the case
Hmm.
is.
Yeah. No, and that's also a great question. because especially for the women out there or the young women that are wanting to become, mothers or family or men or whatever, whoever wants to eventually have children, and the demands that they place on family. Yeah, I mean, as you have more responsibility, there's no more such thing as 40-hour weeks. There's no such thing as I turn off my phone at 5 and go, help my boys with their homework. And there's no such thing as I don't work on weekends. The fact is, when you have more responsibility, you have to be accessible at all times because there's always things happening, especially in our field. There can be a construction issue going on Saturday for one of our projects. There could be, some sort of emergency going on with a staff member, and on for whatever reason on Monday evening at 9 o'clock. So again, there's no such thing as a 40-hour week. It's definitely beyond that. And I think the fact with our phones and just, our phones are always with us. Now it's like I get emails wherever I'm at, even if I'm, on
Yeah.
vacation with my family, I'm getting work emails come in. So it's very much an integrated world now that we're living in with work. So that's one thing, as far as responsibility is that there's definitely more demands on your time. Now you're responsible for not just yourself, but for others, which is also very, when you think about responsibility, you think about, what you're in charge of. And then you have people now that, their future. So what are the projects that they're going to be working on a year from now, 2 years from now? What is that going to look like? And so that's part of the responsibility that, executives have is how are we going to make sure there's work coming in that our team can work on. And so that way you don't have to deal with people losing their job, which is, a huge responsibility, right? If you think about that, everybody's got a life, everybody's got family, everybody's got responsibilities. And so your responsibilities as you move up the ladder are going to become greater because now there's going to be more people that are going to depend on you in order for their lives to be successful. So again, time demand is huge. The amount of responsibilities you have is huge. And so that's part of the responsibilities that come as you move up in your career and you're in management or you're an executive, you have to deal with those situations. So
So we'd like to move forward. We have another question here that's connected to something you mentioned earlier, and that has to do with the disparity or the lack of minorities, not just engineers, but minorities in engineering in the workforce, and
mhm.
how that connects with some of your work in the employee resource groups.
Mm. Yeah. So employee resource groups are something that have come forward, I'd say within the last 10 to 12 years in the industry. And what they do is those are actually formed by different organizations. They're specific to the organization. So I work for a company, of course, called Tetra Tech. So Tetra Tech has their own employee resource groups. But if you look at other companies, agencies, they also have created, or some of them are creating employee resource groups. And those are internal groups focused at how we can recruit more diverse people into our company or into our industry as a whole, right? Because that's really what the ERGs are about. But for example, for Tetra Tech, it's how can we get more Latinos and Hispanics working for Tetra Tech would be something that an employee resource group is focused on. And the other part of that is retention. So like I said at the beginning, not only getting us into the field is hard, but also keeping us in the field is hard. And so we also provide professional development opportunities for our members. So things around like, we're talking about negotiation skills, leadership skills, how to develop your career. We have different speakers come in, talk about that. We offer different tools for the people that work at our company on how they can develop their career. And so, and then just providing a place for for people to get together and share, things with their culture. A lot of times when we get together, we'll have like music on or we'll talk about food that reminds us from when we were at home, with
Mhm.
our families, what are the smells? And we just had an event and that was one of the questions, what smells remind you of your childhood? And then you start seeing like
Mm.
all these different smells come up, but all those things connect us as a culture. And so it's really nice in a place like, for example, Tetra Tech, that's 20,000 employees, for you to have a place to come together and share those experiences. It's an automatic bonding that you have. And so it just helps, again, meet people, um, resources to understand what's going on with the company and just help our community thrive. And so that's what employee resource groups do for whatever organization they're part of, is they're all part of supporting the company, supporting the culture, supporting our people, providing a platform for us to speak about issues that are important to us as well. One of the issues that I always comes up with our community is language, and speaking. Some people feel like because they have an accent, they're automatically thought of as not as smart as others. Some people feel like they want to be talking English all the time, and some people only talk Spanish, and so it's a big topic of discussion about what language should we be talking, and people in outside the U.S. want to learn English, and people in the United States want to talk Spanish. So it's just one of those topics that's specific to our culture, where an employee resource group can be the place to come and talk about those things and bring them forward to the company, as a united front, so that way we can get different things done and changed and implemented with the company. But that's what they're about, and I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud of our employee resource group that's called Voices ERG. But proud of the industry as a whole, that we're using them as a way to help get more diverse people in the engineering field. So it's a really good thing.
No, that's a wonderful thing, and thank you for walking us through what a ERG is. A quick follow-up, though, why do you think that the retention is so poor in particularly engineering firms?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on right now. I mean, one of the things is definitely family, so family constraints. And this is again talking to the young mothers out there, or fathers. Once a child comes along, your priorities shift sometimes, and you don't want to spend that much time at work. You want to be at home with your child. So that's a big part of why people leave in general, is because of that. There's family shift. There's also, maybe there's an elderly parent that you need to take care of, and you just can't work as much as you'd like. And so you have to take time off for that. There's also people that, because of the virtual environment, that now has kind of shifted their thinking. They don't maybe want to be in this field anymore. Maybe they have passions around, cooking, or now with social media, you have opportunities to become an influencer, or just different things going on that I think COVID has now shined a light on where you want to spend your time and what you want to be doing. And because of this virtual environments, cause people to just leave the field in general. Um, I know personally, the women that I started with, none of them are engineers anymore, and it's because they had children and they wanted to stay at home with their children as they are young, growing up. So I know that firsthand. Again, let's see, two of them were Latinas. The other two were not. But of course, they're definitely, the female population is part of that whole minority group, as well. So that's definitely a really influential thing that's going on right now, that's affecting our industry. And I just think right now, it's a really competitive marketplace. So a lot of people are sort of jumping around or starting their own companies, which is great. And then they're just moving from company to different company just because they're paying a lot more money. And so it's just an opportunity to kind of jump around and figure out what's going on in the industry and experience different things. But I think those are some of the things, that come to mind as far as what's affecting, the retention rates for our industry.
So we got maybe two more quick questions for professional development, and then we have like a big picture closing question for the podcast.
All right.
So obviously, when students start transitioning from high school to college or from college to the workforce, that's always a time where there's like a lot of moving parts, and you're trying to figure out what you want to do. What advice would you give for others who are struggling to figure out what career path to take?
Well, I would say definitely, I think doing research first. Like, I think understanding what subjects you like is huge, right? That's, I think, one of the first
Mhm.
things is understanding what subjects you like, and then doing research to figure out what careers are possible. Again, I had no idea that engineering what they did, but there's so many other careers out there that I don't, I never knew even existed. And so I think doing research online with the subjects you like, I think, is a really good first step. I think also reaching out to universities and talking to them and saying, I really like this subject, can you talk more about this curriculum for this particular field? You can understand what the different like curriculum paths are for the different areas that you're interested in. Because a lot of times, like or I'll hear people say, "Oh yeah, I want to become a doctor, but you know what? I don't really like biology. That's not my favorite subject." And you're like, "Okay, well, that's like a large part of your education is going to be around that." So I think understanding what that curriculum is for that whatever field it is you may be interested in, I think is also an important piece. That's why I would recommend talking to a college or university about what their programs are, and making those decisions. And then I think also just taking time off. I mean, life is really short, and so there's a lot of times there's this pressure that I'm supposed to graduate from high school and I'm supposed to go to college and I'm supposed to find a job. Maybe taking like a year or two off. I know people that go and travel. I don't know how they get the money to do it, but people that go and like travel for a year, or people that maybe there's a junior college, is a great option too. Maybe there's another career path that's out there that you haven't explored yet, and maybe a junior college just to kind of keep yourself in the path, in the game, but not necessarily declare a major, but just, it doesn't have to be that straight line of go to college, get a
Mhm.
job, trying out different things in between, I think is important because, it's a grind to be working in this world. And, like they say, you're going to be
Mhm.
working for what? I don't even know how many years now, what the estimate is. It's like craziness, how many years you're going to be working. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking time off to just figure things out
Yep.
and exploring different possibilities and before you make that decision of what you want to be doing the rest of your life. So
I like that. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have the answers now, and I like the idea of like taking time to kind of figure it out. One last
mhm.
question for you for professional development, um, and this question is: when I say resource, think of like a certification, a conference, a scholarship, or any just piece of advice. But if you had to give one resource for our audience to help them have a successful career, what resource would that be, or what word of advice would that be?
um
What website on the internet would you
what
recommend?
website? Ooh,
Any of those?
I
Yeah.
don't a website. Oh, I don't really know of a
Ju
website.
just as an example, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I don't know of a specific website. Again, I think just like Googling topics,
Okay.
and seeing what comes up, is a good first step. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just so many resources on the internet. It's hard to just pin one website to focus in on. I
Gotcha.
know
Well,
that's kind of a weak answer, right?
it's fine. I could think of a
The
website
wishy
where they
washy.
can go to customjourneys.com
That's true.
and check out the
Oh, that was
That's
a
pod.
very
trick.
true.
That was a trick question.
Uh,
That was your
You're
layup
like,
for
when is
you to
she
be
gonna
yes,
like,
say
yes.
that? When is she gonna?
It's fine, it's fine.
"Judith,
It's fine,
you
Jeff.
missed your cue."
I
I'm a
know.
bad. I'm
No,
a
No,
we're
bad
messing
kid.
with you.
you're
We're
wonderful.
messing
You're
with you.
wonderful. So Judith, no, this has been great. We have about a few minutes left in the pod. Believe it or not, we've been talking for over an hour. We could probably talk another hour if we wanted to, but we can't conclude the pod without asking you our big picture question. So salary was the first hot seat question, but now we have the picture question, and it's simply, how can we get more people of color, more female students into the STEM professions? And this can come from a policy change on a national level, state level, local level. It could be a personal thing, whatever's most important for you from your perspective. That's where we're interested in hearing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what you guys are doing is huge, right? So podcasts, a lot of the social
Okay.
media tools that people can use is definitely very, very valuable to get the word out. But what I would say is everybody, who's an engineer, all the Latinos, Hispanics, or minorities that are engineers, going back to where you came from, your schools, your communities, and talking to them about your path is huge. I can't explain how impactful that could be. Just like when I was young and I had no idea what engineers did, it's still the same way. A lot of our disadvantaged communities, minorities, don't know what engineers do. So going and talking to them, and they always have career days, they always have uh, opportunity for people to come talk to them. Take advantage of them. Go back and talk to them and tell them about what you did and your path. Both of you guys, you both of you are successful. You can't imagine the impact that you have in going and talking to them. And maybe it's not where you came from. Maybe it's there where you live now. There's so many young kids, I'm talking about elementary kids, junior high, high school that just don't even know what we do. And so getting the word out to them is, I think, very impactful for them to first understand what engineers do and then to go into the career path. And so that way we see um, the difference that we want to see in the industry. So that's what I would say is that all your listeners who are in the STEM field, go back to where you came from and go talk to those students or go to any elementary school that's where you live and talk to them about what you do. And that can have a huge impact on our industry moving forward.
Yep. I think that's great. We all gotta play our part and give back, and I think
Mhm.
that's really important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Real quick before I forget, because I try to ask all our guests this question, but is Tetra Tech hiring? And if so, how do they find you guys and any opportunities that are out there?
Yes, we're hiring. We're hiring. Go to our website, tetratech.com. Look for jobs. There's a link there. There we've got so many requisitions open right now. You can do that, or you can go to LinkedIn, our second favorite platform. Also, there's jobs posting through LinkedIn. You can look at Tetra Tech LinkedIn page, and then you can see jobs, and then it's got all the postings there. One of the cool things now about COVID is that this virtual environment has now provided us different places to place people. So gone are the days where I'm going to live in Austin, Texas and work in Austin, Texas. Now it's about maybe I can live in Austin, Texas, but work on projects, in the Northeast or the West, more on the Western side. So it's a really great time. Right now, it's a really great time for engineers, for STEM professionals. I would encourage you all to go to our website, check all that out and look for requisition, something that's of interest to you. But yes, we're definitely hiring and looking.
I'm about to ask if they hire PhDs, but I won't go there. I won't go there today. I won't
We
go there
do.
today.
We do
Hook my
hire
brother up.
PhDs.
Hook a brother up.
All right, Judith. Well,
Hook
this
a
has been a
brother
wonder.
up.
Yes, exactly. I don't mind warm weather. I think that'd be ideal. But anyway, let's close this out, man. All right, Judith. This has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for sharing your journey with us. Is there anything or anyone you want to shout out or promote before we close?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you guys, again, thank you for doing this for our community, for getting the word out, for starting this podcast, and for inviting me to be part of this. Again, shout out to my parents because without them, I wouldn't have come into this path. Shout out to my husband and my children who support me.
But
I
thank
was
you
talking.
so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Really inspirational, really interesting, and really excited about the things that you're doing at Tetra Tech, and not only in Tetra Tech but also with Ship. So thank you for all that you do also to help the community as well.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
All right, for custom journeys, this has been a conversation with Judith, and I am Elisa Iglesias with my podcast co-host Andrew Baines, and we're out of here.